Everything is down this month except Fartcoin, the most solid of all the cryptocurrencies. The question is, how much longer can this rally last? Is this just yet another pump and dump? Or is this the beginning of a rally where Fartcoin is able to withstand the overall macro environment? Now, this is not the first time I'm talking about Fartcoin on this channel. There have been 6 videos in total, and the first one was published 168 days ago. That was over here when Fartcoin was still at 5 cents. Now it's at 57 cents, more than a 10x from that. But of course, from the top to the current price, it went down by more than 70%. But I try to be early on this channel, and if you don't want to miss what potentially might come next, feel free to subscribe over here. Now, how did I find out about Fartcoin that early? The answer is wallet tracking. So in a bull market, it's best to look at what are other influential people doing. For example, over here, Kyle Chessy bought Fartcoin for the 4 cents on the 23rd of October. That's a great strategy when a lot of people enter the market, when the market is expanding. When we are in a bull market, it makes sense to buy the bottoms, and it makes sense to jump on things that are very risk on. Currently, we are not in such a market. So I'm not tracking the wallets that actively anymore. Because here is what's currently going on. It appears as if activity is declining. So Fartcoin had been launched on the Pump.fun ecosystem. That's a launchpad on Solana for meme coins. And what we are seeing in this chart is the number of deployed transactions on that platform. And it's coming down since January of this year. We also see how Solana itself starts to underperform the market. This is the Solana dominance, and there seems to be somewhat of an invisible ceiling at around 3 to 3.5% of all of crypto being in Solana. We had the massive crash in 2021 and 2022 where Solana underperformed the rest of the market by more than 80%. And it seems like we're now just starting another potentially similar crash. So far, the underperformance in the last weeks is 36%. And so when Bitcoin is going down, when Solana is going down, when meme coin speculation is going down, then Fartcoin, of course, long term has a very hard headwind. But check out this chart. This is the others dominance. So how much of all of crypto is currently in the altcoins that are not in the top 10? The chart starts in 2014, and initially we saw more and more adoption of the altcoins. But it seems like that adoption has come to a halt, and now the long-term trend breaks. We have gone below the support line. The altcoins continue to stay weak. And so yes, Fartcoin did okay in the last months, but it's very unlikely that you have all your money in just one altcoin, right? If you've got several altcoins, chances are you are down. Chances are more than 80% actually that you're down. Because have a look at this. That's the performance of the top 100 altcoins in the last year. And over here, we've got Bitcoin, and we've got also 2 altcoins that are just connected to the gold price. So that's Pax Gold and Tether Gold. And outside of those 2 altcoins, we've only got 14 altcoins that did better than Bitcoin in the last year, during a year where Bitcoin actually went up by 15%. The vast majority of altcoins did worse than Bitcoin in the last year. So if you're buying an altcoin, the odds are against us. We tend to rather underperform. And I think it's very likely that this will continue. There is this concept of altcoin season, right? The time in the market where altcoins tend to outperform Bitcoin, but that tends to happen only at the end of a bull market. So we tend to go higher in Bitcoin, higher and higher, and then at some point people go more risk on. Currently, we are not in that situation. First, we need to see Bitcoin outperforming more and more of the market. And this here is the Bitcoin dominance over the long term. And when this is crashing, that means that we've got altcoin season. So Bitcoin becomes less important as a fraction of all of crypto. And that tended to happen when the Bitcoin dominance was close to 70%. Currently, we are in a rising trend for Bitcoin dominance, or in other words, a falling trend for the altcoins. And this could last for the next 1, potentially 1.5 years. So I believe it's likely that this picture will not change. What we've got over here is the Fartcoin price relative to Solana. And even though Fartcoin is going up recently, it's not at an all-time high relative to SOL. So actually, since the middle of January of this year, Fartcoin still did worse than Solana. And I don't think that it will outperform Solana long term. And Solana is likely going to depress and stay in that negative trend. And so when we are clearly not in altcoin season, and when Bitcoin tends to outperform most alts, I don't think it's a smart strategy trying to pick the one asset that could perform better. Isn't it much smarter to bet on the direction that's currently prevalent, which means prices going down, which means altcoins doing worse? And I've talked about this already for several weeks on this channel. If you're new here, you might think that I'm just talking about this because we recently crashed, but actually this community is shorting the altcoins since Bitcoin hit 100K. And this is the proof. Those are all the trades that are shared by the community. So a lot of people go into shorting altcoins with leverage. Now there is a red marker on top of the assets that are currently shorted. And that's of course because I don't want to share this directly here on YouTube. But yeah, there are several approaches. We can either short altcoins that underperform Bitcoin very consistently over time with very little volatility. So that's strategy number one. Or we can look for assets that tend to get traded in a range, that tend to get pump and dumped. So for example, here, Dogecoin. I opened a short over here and I wrote this Dogecoin depression, and a lot of other members in the community did this as well. I think most people have it backwards. Most people hyper focus on what asset to buy or sell over here. But what I think is much more important is to actually figure out where is the macro going. If the macro tends to go further down, if Bitcoin tends to sell off further, then does it really make sense to put in that much focus on what asset to buy? And is it that likely that we're going to buy Fartcoin? It's much more likely that we're going to buy anything else here, right? And then, if that's the case, why not bet on falling prices? Just have a look at Bitcoin long term, right? This is a very long term chart starting in 2011. And those are two curved lines that, interestingly enough, fit the tops and the bottoms very well. And nobody knows if those lines will hold forever. But right now, it seems like the trend is pretty clear and that we're rather going to further drop from here, potentially all the way to 50K, maybe even 40K. Or have a look at the average cost basis of the market in Bitcoin. The market in aggregate is still in profit. It doesn't feel like this because all short-term traders are in losses, but the long-term holders of Bitcoin are still in profit and they're taking that profit. The market is only in losses once we fall below $44,000 in Bitcoin. That's when crypto tends to become cheap again. Before that point, I think it makes sense to still continue betting on falling prices most of the time. Now, the reason why most people don't make money in a market like this is because it seems very hard to short the market. It seems very hard not to lose your funds. People tend to get liquidated. Risk management isn't that easy. Finding the right platform isn't that easy. But all of those problems can be solved. Once we have the risk management properly set up, once we use the right platforms, then making money in bear markets is comparatively easy. The odds are in our favor. Most things go down. And so to bridge that knowledge gap, how to set up proper shorts, how to do the risk management, etc., how to learn about tokenomics and relative valuations, etc., I have built several tutorial videos. There are more than 100 tutorial videos in total, and that's all part of the membership here. So feel free to check it out. It's down below. It's thebitcoinstrategy.com. And because most people lost money in the last weeks, I've also reduced the rate from 165 to 125 per month. And there's also a 1-week money back guarantee. So in case you don't like premium, just message me within the first week and you'll get back the money 100%. There's really zero risk. It's all about being directionally correct. It's all about shorting the right altcoins and do this with proper risk management. Again, here are all the trades of the community members. So people are making money during phases like this, even though it doesn't look like this. I think it's the wrong approach in the current market to try to do wallet tracking or to try to pick the few winners. I think it's much better to just bet on what's happening overall. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish here regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in premium. Cheers.